Welcome to the We Are Libertarians bonus show. I am joined by Harry, Rhinehold, and Hodey. Hodey, how are you doing?
Oh, man, so good, and glad to be talking to the bonus people, the Patreons, because those are the only people I actually care about.
Now, I don't think we've really filled Harry in, and I don't know what you want to talk about, but I'll kind of let you lead the discussion. But I have to be honest with the listeners, and I think we're in good company, but I think for the last 3 years, and I've talked to Harry about this a little bit, about twice a year, I want to shut down the podcast. I'm ready to close it all down. I just get so sick of politics. I get so sick of people. I love our people, and I continue to do this because of people like those of you listening and the great letters that we consistently get from people saying I'm a libertarian because you guys brought me to libertarianism. But I've got to be honest, like this whole Bill Weld thing, it just wore me out. I'm worn out with people. I'm worn out with politics. Like I haven't read anything in a couple weeks. Like it was nice to have last week off, just because sometimes you need a little bit of a break. Like I recorded that the week before with Rob, but I don't know. It's the older I get, the more wisdom I see in like what Roger Paxton has said is like I'm just trying to make my family free. You know, watching Big Fish for the first time, you see in Big Fish the end where he's taking him to the lake.
Yeah.
And you see all the people in his life are at the lake. Mm-hmm. And I just watched that and I went, the only world that matters are the 100 people that show up to your funeral. Like the 100 people that you come into contact with on a daily basis, like that's your world. Like there's no reason for a Hoosier to care about what New Yorker Christian Gillibrand thinks about Virginian Governor Ralph Northam. Like there's really no reason for me to care about what's happening in Venezuela. Like because functionally none of it matters to my life.
Yeah.
But the MAGA hat kids and the Gillette ads of the world, like we have this view of the public sphere really matters, when really it's just about our small lives. And you go, like, am I making a difference doing this? Am I really, like, making a difference even focusing on politics and not, maybe more of my religious activities, like working at, food pantries and things like that. So sometimes I struggle with keeping the show going because I just don't care. And it's not that I care about the listener, but I just don't care about politics and what we're talking about because I find it meaningless. And really at the core of it is improving myself so I can be a better support system for the people around me. It really matters way more than what I think about Donald Trump. Like getting my health right with diet and exercise, going to therapy, participating in spiritual events, no matter what your religion. I'm a Christian, and so I go to Christian stuff, or maybe that's yoga for some people. Finding personal fulfillment and growth, I think, Hodey, a lot of times matters way more than a lot of the stuff that we talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the edification process, I think, is something that's necessary for me to keep going in it. I think, like you, I have been sick of politics and sick of making things political. Like that MAGA hat kid thing was all about a failure in media, and it just became a firestorm of politics. And I just was tired of discussing it, no matter of what the MAGA hat means to different people. And I'm tired. I'm tired of the Bill Weld thing. I'm tired of all of it. I know what my perspectives are. I enjoy sharing my ideas. Recording the daily podcast, I will admit I am not taking the crown from a Chris Spangle or a Tom Woods anytime soon. It's something I do for me. I think it's fun. It's like a person who plays guitar for fun and they like doing it. I'm like, it's my voice and I'm doing something, Mom. I'm doing something. It's fun. And, it's something I do for myself. But that's because it's personally constructive to me. And then sometimes it's like, hey, do you want to record more dailies about these politics? Like, man, not really right now. Like, I am loving the book club so much because I've gotten so much development from it. I joined the Boss Hog Dakota Davis's book club, and that was awesome. So I'm reading the 2 books at once now. And both those have been great because I've been fulfilled, and I'm trying to fill my time with more things that fulfill me. Now, one of the things that I did want to say is you talk about the 100 people that you want at your funeral. Sometimes I do feel like I need to send invitations to that funeral, though, which is why I like social media a little bit, because it allows me to connect with like a Chris Spangle, a Harry Price, a Rhinehold, a Paul Copeland, Sarah Brady Wagner, everybody at the Wall Network, because they're people after my own heart that want to change culture, that want to live a life of liberty, that want to build each other up, that believe in positive discourse as opposed to anger mechanics. And I love that I've managed to find that.
By the way, Anger Mechanics, my favorite Nicktoons show. My niece loves it.
Yeah.
Anger Mechanics. Thanks.
It's a good way to get the rage out for those toddlers who are just so angsty.
It's called a joke. Learn it.
Yeah. But and so for me, what I'm trying to do right now is I'm kind of reassessing my time. I've reorganized my time at work so that I'm done by 5:00, Mountain Time every day. And I just want to do something constructive, something that is positive and building, kind of like the book club. I've got the book club. I want to stick to recording at least 1 or 2 dailies a week for the Wall Network. But I don't know what the next step is right now, and I've got a lot on my plate and a lot to think about.
I think it's balance. I think for me, you've probably noticed that we're down to 1 episode a week, and it's we launched a new mobile app at work, and I had 500 emails to answer last week, and it's just like I just at some point in January had to say to myself, like, this isn't going to be consistent. When you have 2 things worth to say it. But the balance was so out of whack for me for all of 2018 in producing content for this, that the dailies have allowed me to find balance, which I love you, Hodey, and Sarah, and Paul, and Rhinehold and Brian Nichols, when he gets me that audio, for providing that's a joke for only he and I. Because I don't want We Are Libertarians to be all of my identity, because it can't be. And living alone with no kids, no wife, nobody that I'm accountable to. I'm accountable to no one. I feel accountability to the patrons. I feel accountability to my job. I feel accountability to some level of my family. But at the end of the day, I want to come home and do whatever I want to do. I can, and I often find myself doing too much work. Nobody says, you need to stop working on this. You need to go to church or meditate or exercise. Like, there's always something to do, and so it's kind of like I've got to find that balance sometimes.
Well, if you want, I can come over and drop Gunther off for hours at a time.
I would totally watch Gunther. I would totally watch Gunther. I cannot wait to be a dad.
Sweet, I'll just start dropping her off here.
Yeah. This is your white dad.
Yep. It'll be easier on me.
No, I think personal growth, Harry, you've always been an inspiration to me in that respect, in that you have to have balance. You have to have a balanced identity. You can't have one thing be all of your identity. And personal growth is an important part of a successful society, community, and as libertarians.
Yeah, as life, and you could divide your personality up to 12 different internet avatars if you feel like it. The other thing which I'm shocked to, like, I'm actually happy with this whole idea of like the 100 people at your funeral and for Big Fish, is because that's the whole, that's the breed of anarchism that I'm in. It's like, you know what, I'm going to do my best to live inside the crack or find the cracks inside the system so the government doesn't see me. I don't know if we'll get anarchy in my lifetime, but I'm going to go find the crack inside the system and live inside that crack.
Well, and that's the problem with government these days, is that it's too large and all-encompassing. Instead of focusing on who's your mayor, who's your township board and all that stuff, you don't care. You don't know, because you're all worried about who's the president and who's the senator, because all the decisions are being made there. Decisions should be close to your community, because every community is going to have different wants and needs. It's not one size fits all in this country.
And that was like there's like in the town I live in, Lawrence politics. Like the town was uproar about like just because they wanted to move the police station and how much money they were spending on building the new police station. But like when you like sitting there at the argument, there's like this is a good argument. This is a reason. There's the perfect reason. Everything was thought out. The only thing I got upset with is that if they just went like a few feet further south, they could just take a building, repurpose it, and I thought it was a huge waste of money.
Yeah.
But that's
we had a situation where I live where somebody wanted to put in a shooting range in a very rural area that was farmland, and it's like, we moved out here for quiet, and you're going to have guns going off 7 days a week. So there was a discussion about that, and we found out that they couldn't do it because of the zoning laws. But that's here or there on that. But it's the local communities getting together and making decisions about their people who care about and know about and spend their time around.
Yeah.
So how do I get more like closer to your 100 people? Because I think on one end, I just want to say, I don't like the physical restraints. That's one of the things that I'd liked about social media is to say,
not
I can
BDSM this morning.
Close a friend to you. How do I get how does a Hodey Johns get that invitation to somebody who's out there in Indiana or somebody who's in Indonesia or wherever the liberty movement may be, or somebody more important than the liberty movement, somebody that I've developed a real friendship with.
Is your question, how do you build intimacy with someone at a longer distance?
I guess the overall question is I just don't know. I want to take a creative direction right now. I want to do something more with the time that I have. I still want it to be like with the wall network, but also personal to something that I can. And I don't know. I've got so many different ideas right now. I am close with charities. I've had experience drafting legislation before. I am close with my Weber County Libertarians. We could easily do like a boss hog of Libertarian County or of Weber County. Libertarian County, we all wish. Or I could do a debate format because I've always been passionate about debate. I just don't know what that next step is.
I genuinely like that debate idea. I think that there is... I think in prepping for this show, I have fallen in love with Intelligence Squared. If you don't know what that podcast or video series is, or the Monk debates, I have really learned a lot in a short amount of time by hearing well-prepped people. I really like that idea. One idea that I've had for the show is maybe taking one of the 4 shows a month and dedicating it to a charity. In times like this where it's kind of lean and there's not a ton of news that I'm interested in, or I'm just not interested in looking at the news, interviewing a charity or talking to somebody who, because I work with, I run in circles with a lot of people who serve on nonprofits or whatever. And, they're desperate to tell their story. And I think when you hear the stories that they can provide, it gives you new perspective. Like the cost gives you new perspective about the world that you live in. And I was working on this, I'm working on this podcast about Indiana politics and history, and we're talking with the city market. It's a public space here in town. Most cities have a city market that's left over from the olden days. They have a lot of homeless people that come in. And, he asked, how do you deal with that? And she said, we give them a lot of services. He said, well, how do you balance out losing customers versus caring for that population? She said, I'm sorry if you feel uncomfortable because humanity is in front of you. And I was like, and I feel like we have chosen, especially this audience, which is, let's be honest, guys, we're white collar. We're in the top 1% of the world. Like, even if you are poor and if you're stone out there, buying a $100 debit card to reload your Patreon every month, like, you're still in the 1% of the world. And I think charities, the beautiful thing about women entering the workforce is they've created this entire new nonprofit sector, and it gives you the ability to raise up humanity in front of people's faces, make them feel uncomfortable. I think the domestic violence episode that we did on 141 with Amanda, it's important for people to hear that this is what's going on. so you can change it. It's important for you to understand that there are fourth graders in. So if you know Greenwood's really close to here. It's south of Indianapolis.
Yeah.
It's upscale part of. I mean, it's not upscale, but it's
a crappy lawns. Yeah,
it's middle class.
Mm-hmm.
Their elementary school, their counselors are dealing with sex trafficking, child selling, prostitution of elementary school students. This is happening in your community. And it's happening in the places that you don't think it's happening. You think sex slavery, that's happening in the African neighborhoods downtown. It's happening in your white suburban neighborhoods. And when you shine the light on that and talk to people who are dealing with the populations you don't want to look at, I think that's something I may do. I think there's some interest on my part, Hodey, and something along those lines. The more charities, the better that we focus on. Because I think private charity is obviously huge, but I love the debate idea and I love the charity idea.
Yeah. I think beyond even just like giving to charity, it's just something that I want to do personally. Like, okay, so that we have a prison around here, and I just think it would be you're open to cook for the prisoners if you want.
Right.
You just have to provide the food and whatnot like that. And just personally, I've been trying to set aside some money for that so that one day, because I love to cook, and I just one day would love to give them like a steak dinner, because I've seen what they have to eat and it's garbage, and I just want to show them love. And I just want to do, that's what I mean, like creative, just something that creates. And maybe I slide in just a little bit, maybe like just a porcupine on the paper plate that they throw away. Just a little bit of liberty to let them know, like, just so you know, like the guy who cared enough to like set aside money to get you guys.
I don't even think you need to do that kind of stuff. Like I'm getting ready to start, because I really been thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I'm tired of living in my bubble of privilege, where I am talking to people like me, and like Harry and I are in the same socioeconomic bracket. He's a little above me, to be honest, but. We're in the same socioeconomic, like everybody I deal with is in, we're doing pretty well. Be it 25-year-olds or, whatever your race, ethnic, color, like I'm around people who are in the same bracket. Right. And as a Christian, I feel called to break out of my comfort zone and deal with populations that I may not feel comfortable around. But also as a libertarian, I think just when you go and get involved in the community and start helping the populations that need help, be it women of domestic violence, homeless, children who are dealing with, orphans, just the elderly. There's so many needy populations that need hands and feet. And I don't think you need to put a porcupine on the plate. I think that when you engage with a human being on a human level and you would develop a relationship with them, out of that comes, why are you doing this?
Wasn't that the motivation for a lot of Christians going out and helping and doing things, was that you didn't have to go and say, hey, we're Christians and we're helping you. Right. It was just you were living the life, and people would see you living it,
right,
and go, oh, maybe he's got something I want to look into, and then they would ask questions, and that's how you did it.
It's the people. It's the Gospels are full of stories of people who nobody cared for them. The man by the pool who can't get into the pool because no one will help him, and he can't lift himself in. And it's Jesus who comes over and helps him into the pool. It's Jesus who touches the lepers. From a Christian model, the circumcision of the penis in the Old Testament, I'm not getting into the circumcision debate, but if you're a Christian, listen up. The circumcision of the Old Testament was a physical, outward, like this was a sign, because you're different than the other. You're different than the Philistines. You're different than the other groups. But in Philippians, Paul says, you are the circumcision. So the idea that we circumcise babies now as Christians is stupid, because there's no biblical there's no biblical New Testament reason for it. Mm-hmm. You are to be the circumcision. You are to be the outward appearance of something different, something special. Mm-hmm. There's something different about you, that you are filled with love, that you go and talk to the people. Because when you do charitable work, nobody says, why the why are you doing that? Maybe they'll say, are you safe? But for the most part, people go, good for you. That's great.
Well, and it was kind of the topic of the daily I did a couple days ago, where, we need to start living the lives of libertarians instead of waiting for government to say it's okay to do it. And one of those things is helping people. And one of the ways I've always wanted to do it, and have in the past before, when I had more time, was doing mentoring.
Right.
Mentoring programs. I calculated if everybody picked one person to mentor, we could eradicate most of the poverty and the ingrained, repeated situation these people are in, because most of them want out. Most of them don't want to be there in that situation. They just don't know how.
Right.
And no one's teaching them. No one's talking to them. Everybody's giving them handouts, giving them a card that they can use to go buy food, but that doesn't help them,
Harry and I volunteered to mentor the IU volleyball team. They seem needy, but to that point, I worked on a campaign in 2004 with Andy Horning, the great Andy Horning, and he put his campaign headquarters in it was like 21st and Capitol. I mean, it was like the hood, and it was in this old black gentleman's house, and the Reverend, and he was quite a character. He was a former boyfriend of Julia Carson, who Andy was running against, so he had all kinds of crazy stories. But there was a woman named Pat who worked on the staff. She just didn't have much going on. She didn't have a job. She didn't have a home. She lived at the campaign headquarters because it was a big house. And she answered phones and did clerical work. And then after it ended and this living situation didn't work out, one of the campaign volunteers, Mike, took Pat, this elderly black woman, into his home, got her a job at Church's Chicken, gave her a home for 3 months, helped her get a job, helped her get herself set up. And then I ran into her a few years down the line. She goes, Mike was my angel. He saved my life. Like I didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm sure that was uncomfortable for Mike, a white guy from Speedway, to open up his home to someone of a completely different ethnicity, socioeconomic class, culture, to allow them into their home because he saw someone that had value. He saw a human being, and he said, this person has value, and I have the ability to help them. And that's truly where I think, libertarians, like this program likes to engage in the culture wars, but you have to understand, like, if you study the civil rights movement, this is where a lot of SJWs go wrong. Like, Martin Luther King knew he needed whites. He knew that to change the culture, he needed the privileged.
Yep.
We recoil from being called privileged, but the reality is that I think about a lot of stuff on a daily basis. Harry does not. That Harry has to think about,
and I think that's
because of the color of his skin. Mm-hmm. I never think about my safety. Like if I'm working and I bend over, I never think about a man checking out my ass. Women, their life is constant harassment. Mm-hmm. Like. And through conversations, I understand, wow, my experience is different than Harry's. My experience is different than a woman's. And it changes my behavior. It makes me change as a human being because I start to see the different as the same. And so I think that's an important part of what we do on the show is try to bring you conversations between people that don't make sense. Like it doesn't, but we who are in the privileged category can reach down and help people who just are desperate for a hand up. If you were in the civil rights era, if you were in slavery, I grew up in Plainfield, Indiana, which was where the National Quaker Meeting House. Every home in downtown Plainfield has an Underground Railroad shelter, because it was known as an Underground Railroad stop. I grew up completely unaware of race. Like, I genuinely, had no, 3 or 4 generations later in a town that really cared for black human beings, that their children's children instilled that into the community. And so when I get into the world, I have no awareness that life is different for Harry because of the color of his skin. Now, that's a good thing, but it also means I'm ignorant in certain ways, you know. So I think that's an example of real privilege. That's where this actually comes from. Like, the problem is when you start to use that as a bludgeon, and you start to say you need to give up your opportunities. It's a scarcity mindset.
Right.
You need to give up because you know.
That's why I don't like the word privilege.
Right.
I think there's got to be a better way of describing that, where you aren't being treated less than you're being treated like a human being should be. Other people are not getting treated as well as they should be.
Right.
Let's focus on that instead of saying that you have been lifted up above your station, and that's kind of what the word privilege institutes.
I think it's like having dealt with women involved in domestic violence. Men who beat women or men who are predators are boys. They're tiny children. They're mental midgets. They are scared of everything.
Yep.
They are absolute squishes.
They're overcompensating.
They're overcompensating. They are terrified of everything. But they don't respect women. And so they don't fear women. And they don't listen to women. And so when their women stand up to them, they see a lesser than in a domestic violence situation. But if you're a man in someone's life, or if you're a man in a woman's life going through that and you stand up to the man, he folds like a chair because he's a pussy. And you don't realize that you have that power. You have the power as a person of power. Every single person listening to me right now is a powerful person. And you have some power where you can take the power that you have and adjust the power for somebody else who is lacking it. You know, and I think that talking about politics, we're trying to look at political solutions when really, like, when you're talking about changing power dynamics, we focus so much on trying to change the power dynamic between us and the government that we forget about the other power dynamics in our lives where we can probably make a bigger direct impact.
Right.
You know.
Well, when I always look at politics as I'm trying to keep the government from hurting my family, hurting my friends,
right?
Putting them in situations that are untenable and they have to fight against.
Right.
You know, if you think something should be done, if you think your neighbor should do something, if you don't have the belief in that enough to go and make it happen yourself, then why are you voting for other people to do it for you so you can absolve yourself from that conflict? So
you talked about in the daily, the forgotten man, Rhinehold, that,
right.
You know, basically what you're saying is if I am unwilling to give, I'm asking the government to force someone to give with a gun. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, then they should shoot them. And so if you need to be willing to get to the point, if you think the government should do it, you should be willing to go to your neighbor with a gun yourself and take the money from them to give it. And I thought that was a very astute point because that really got me thinking about this whole charity thing and how we give. We have an order of operations problem largely within the party. We say, well, once the government decreases enough, I'll finally be able to have the money and the time in order to give it to you. And people just aren't going to trust us that way. Maybe you will be able to give more, but you need to give some right now. You need to be able to give what you have now.
Compromise.
Yeah. And proving to other people, hey, this will work. We can prove it now. We don't have to try and convince them with the words. We can, in action, show it working. And
no one believes words anymore. Look at social media. Words are cheap.
Well, the hundreds of actions that this audience can participate in on a daily basis, that has weight. You have, when you're talking about politics, you have one action that you can take that sends a signal, and it's a vote. But you have hundreds of daily choices that make up the society that you live in. And you can use those to make people more free or less free.
And the other thing I've noticed, too, is a lot of libertarians are very anti-emotion, right? And they're like, well, don't think with your emotions, don't believe with your emotions. And that's just an emotional response and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, emotions are just a signal to your brain. Just like, okay, if you were to prick your finger, you would feel that because you're getting a sensory perception from that through your nerves up to your brain, and it's telling you, oh, I just had that happen. All an emotion is you getting information from the societal reactions around you and people's interactions with that. So you're feeling them. It's empathy for what they're feeling. And those are just more information that's being given to you. How you react to that is something that you can control. And you can say, okay, I choose to accept this as rational, emotional, as opposed to irrational, emotional, and temper yourself. But if you completely ignore it, if you completely shut it out, you're basically numbing your body. And then when you walk around with a numb body and you cut yourself, you're not going to know it, and you're going to have it get sepsis and fall off. It's the same thing. If you ignore your emotions and sensing the world around you, you're going to atrophy that part of your life, and you're going to become less human being for it.
Right. Yeah, I think empathy is the lifeblood of a libertarian society.
Yeah.
And you have to understand, like, in a decentralized market, that is what solves problems. Let me make this point, and then I'll throw it to you, Harry, because I know you got something to say. The answer to so many problems is the market will take care of it. But what is the next step beyond that? It's a lot of times it's empathy or a problem being solved, or the nonprofit world will take care of it. And when you take something, I have this conversation like every day. Let me pull this up. Basically this person is getting, I can't go into it. I wanted to, but I was like, I can't. I answer the question every day, well, how will we help this class, or how will we help this group that doesn't have power, that doesn't have the availability of resources, that doesn't have this or that? And the answer is empathy. I'm not going to lie, I don't care about pet shelters. Like, I am so human-focused and so obsessed with human beings and their needs that I look at pet shelters and I go, this is a tremendous waste of resources. This is property. I love my cats dearly, but they are property. They are animals. They don't have the divine spirit that humans do. We will give thousands of dollars a year to animal shelters, but we won't feed the homeless. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But at the end of the day, if that's what a person listening is into, and that's what motivates you, and that's what you care about, and that's what you're moved by, and that's what draws empathy, I'm glad you exist to take care of animals. Because I'm sure as shit not going to do it, because I don't give a fuck. Like, I want to go to Harry, because Harry's waiting patiently.
You just described my wife and
right.
How I'm not going to let her listen to this episode now. Who said that?
And the puppers are so cute. They need help.
People can look at me like I'm a monster, but at the end of the day, like, I think I'm making my point very clearly. Like, I'm not going to participate in raising money for animal shelters. I just don't think it's an efficient use of resources. But if you don't agree with me, that's cool, because I'm not going to force my belief on you.
That's the great thing about doing this.
You're not going to make me
believe.
Right. You're not going to make me participate in your life.
Yeah, yeah. One thing is you guys were talking about, like, giving and showing that you can give. Baby step number 7 in the Dave Ramsey system, and that's why people believe in Dave Ramsey's whole, like, financial peace university. And it hasn't really changed that much, because it's just living in the lifestyle, going through the baby steps, and doing it, and showing so many people do it in the community, and watching that many people get out of the slavery, which is debt. It's the exact same thing. And Baby Step 7 is always like, and then give back, help other people. It's that tenement that, inside of in financial peace, you feel so great when you get there, because you are helping people.
Yeah. Yeah, like, libertarianism is not just a set of beliefs, and libertarianism is not a religion, and it's not an identity. Libertarianism is a practice. It's every day comparing yourself to this constant set of nonviolence principles, and how can you enact nonviolent principles and caring for your fellow man together. So final thoughts. Let's start wrapping up. Hodey, final. Let's end with Hodey, and then let's start with Harry, and then we'll go around the table here.
All right. Being someone of the privileged class, I like to have someone around me to help me keep me grounded to the others. I use my wife. She likes to work with those people.
Some may say she's related to those people.
Related to them people.
And by them, you mean the poors.
Yeah, the poors. Well, no, she you know, she's one person like that's in my life that can like stand about being around the general public. Mm-hmm. You know, like I'm fine. I could be around people. I could do it, but I choose not to because some of the things they do frustrate me to no end, and I can't hear their daily life struggles other than looking them in the face and go like, well, you're the problem. You're your own problem.
Right.
And until you realize that there's nothing I can do to help you.
Right.
You know, the moment you realize you are your own problem, then I can help you and show you the door. But till then, I can't help you. Mm-hmm. Well, she helps ground me into those people. She helps me like, you know, understand and be with them. I feel so bad I come to them people. But she also helps. She is a lot more streetwise than I am. She helps shows me things that go in. Like when you were talking about.
She's white, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
Harry's wife is more streetwise than Harry.
Yeah, whitest of the white. But she's the one that like, because like when you were talking about how the sex trafficking like that didn't shock me at all because. You know, like they pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
She shows me it. You know, she was like, "This, you know, this is who I caught today on camera and stuff like that." And then dealing with the struggle that some of these people are dealing with, because the place where she works at now currently is like she sees all these people stuck in these traps. You know?
Yeah,
and it are traps. I mean, that's where I can go now. Is the mentoring I was talking about, getting people out of that. Mm-hmm. The traps that they find themselves in. We want to help them financially.
Right. My friend, Miss Pat, she's a comedian, hilarious comedian. If you don't know Miss Pat, check her out. She's going to be super famous because she's one of the funniest human beings alive. We were having a conversation recently, and she's got some amazing opportunities for ABC sitcoms, and like she's just on a level where she's like going to be an overnight sensation in like 5 years, you know, because she's just worked so hard. And we, you know, and I'm, you know, don't tell her I said this, but. You know, I think when you're in her position, you kind of look at it and you go, how do I belong there? How do I belong with like in Hollywood? Yeah, how can I fit in there? Like, there's no way. Like, that's such a level that I couldn't imagine getting to. And I'm just like, do you realize that the jump? She lives in my hometown of Plainfield that I talked about earlier. I go, do you realize that the jump? Her book Rabbit is amazing. It's maybe the best biography I've ever read. I go, I read your life story, and growing up in the slums of Atlanta, like what you went through, the statistical likelihood of you going from where you lived in Atlanta to Plainfield where I lived is so much more astronomically insane than from you getting to Plainfield to Hollywood. Right. That's a few well-connected people to getting you to where you need to be and some God-given talent. Mm-hmm. But the struggle to get to, I go, congratulations, you have white privilege now. And she laughed because she's an amazing success story already, you know, and no matter if you never hear of her again or not, like I guess it just punched me in the face when I listened to Glenn Beck at Christmas pay off all those Walmart tabs. Mm-hmm. You know, he's in a wealthy suburb of Dallas, he's in a Walmart, and there are people who can't afford to pay $75 on layaway. They just can't get $32 more to pay off layaway because they're struggling that deeply, and they're surrounded by people with lots of money and resources. And I don't think that you should ever be forced, like AOC wants to. I don't think you should be forced to give that up. I think that you should be. I don't want to say compelled because I don't know if that means force or not, but like you should be persuaded to help people if you have the ability.
Right. And it's like what I was saying is that the way it is now is that you're demanded to help others before you can help yourself. Yeah. And it should be you should make sure you are taken care of and your needs are met and your family's needs are met, because that's what everybody's real goal is, to take care of their family and their immediate friends and stuff and then help other people.
Right.
You know, as an old Taoist tenet that you become immortal by doing 1,000 good deeds, but a good deed consists of something that doesn't hurt anybody, including yourself.
Right.
So that's the challenge, is getting there, is helping other people, but not doing it at your expense to the point that you are detrimentally harming you.
There's a great
in the process.
There's a book called Boundaries, and it's Christian based, but it's a really great book on boundaries. And they talk about the Good Samaritan. It's like the Good Samaritan stopped and helped the man get help. Mm-hmm. You know, he was a Jew, and Samaritans didn't talk to Jews and Samaritans didn't talk, but you know he helped the Samaritan because the Samaritan's a human being. It didn't matter that their class difference or their religious difference or whatever. He was a human being in need. But the boundaries goes, but he didn't delay his business trip to Jerusalem to stay for 3 extra days to make sure that he got all this extra help. He didn't impede on his business. He helped the person, then he moved on. He didn't, and that was so like life-changing for me because being such a codependent person, especially after the divorce, it's like I'm hurting myself to help other people instead of like the best thing you can do is put on your own mask before you help somebody put on theirs. And I think that's kind of where I'm at. So
there's also people with hero complexes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was total white knight. Like I needed to find my meaning in helping other people,
right?
Instead of
Saving
finding
people,
my meaning in friendships and multivaried pieces of my identity. So Hodey, final thoughts.
Sure. So I think everybody has somebody in their life that needs help. You mentioned a school close by where they're going through child prostitution, and you think it's so far away. And if it seems so far away, you don't have to look far. You don't have to lift too many rocks to find the worms. We had Jamie had somebody she worked with that got kicked out of her house. We didn't ask for what reason, but we have an extra room at our house and let her stay there for a little bit. And she is as libtard as libtards get. And she she drives us crazy with the political views, but whenever I talk now, she listens, and it's growing on her. Now, it's not all about making her a libertarian. That's not the point. You know, the point was we took her out. The thing is what she got kicked out for, I think, was dropping acid, doing drugs in the house. The thing is she has one side of the family where she took drugs and got kicked out. And then she has somebody else in her life where she still took drugs and got brought in. Which one then do you think commands more respect in her life now? And there is somebody like that in your life where I'm not saying that you have to agree with them, but you can turn them into an ally. I'm going to expound on the point that you said, Chris, about Martin Luther King Jr. He knew he didn't just need whites. He needed racist whites to change America. He needed people to say, okay, I don't like black people. I don't choose to sit next to them. I wouldn't choose to hire them. But when I see them cry because a German shepherd has been sicked on their dogs and is tearing on their flesh, there's something about those tears that I just can't resist anymore. And that was the tool. That was the tactic to say, look, I don't need you to accept us all at once, but can you take just a little bit? And that's really the genuine charity, that spirit that we need to say, look, I'm going to reach out to them. I might not love where this person, we don't do drugs at our house. I'm not big on acid, right? But she needs somebody to show her love. And when I say, I don't believe that doing acid is good for your life, I am more likely to change her than her own mother, who says doing acid is not good for her life. It's not the message. It was the method by which we went about showing that we still loved her. Now, I understand some drug addicts start stealing from your house. And I mean, there's a point where you have to cut things off. Boundaries is a great book. You should absolutely read it. I understand. But, that's just the experience that we have. And that's how you really create something. I guess part 2 of my final thought is, I think I will do the debate show. The hardware is not where I want it. The software is not where I want it. I tried to get a nice intro. I've tried all these different texts and I'm just not good at it. But if the quality of the conversation is really what's going to sell it, I think I'm just going to dive into it.
Zoom is good enough, Hodey.
Yeah. If Zoom's good enough, I know how to use that at the very least.
And this is something Chris pointed out a long time ago on the Chris Spangle show, is that your first efforts are not good. You're not going to be happy with them, but you got to do it.
Yeah.
And that's how you learn this is what I did wrong. This is what I did wrong. You hear it, you learn it, you grow from it, and that's the only way anybody does. Nobody wakes up and it's immediately
the only way to get good at something is reps.
Right.
The only way to, like, if you sit there and try to think about it like your physical life. Try to think yourself into biceps. Mm-hmm. It's not how it works. You have to do reps. Like you don't perfect your brain into it's the same with any creative work. So I would just start with Zoom. You got Zoom. It works. We can, maybe work out a system of shipping out some of these ATR 2100 so it sounds good. Like, that's why like Leo sends in the mail box with the mic, and then there's a tag in there so they can ship it back. Maybe something along those lines if they don't have a good mic. But yeah, you just got to start it. You just got to do it. So go ahead, finish up, Hodey.
No, it's all good. So I think I'll start that, and then I think what we said about the charity, maybe once a month, do something. I still want to make it wall related, even if I don't preach We Are Libertarians. At least do some recording or something, talk about people's experience, because I still want to do it myself, and I still want to be for myself. I truly believe in the good work that it does as much good for you to give. I know when I went through my divorce, that was my medicine, was volunteering. I went to a veterans home, and all they want is for someone to talk to them.
Yeah.
That was my job. They didn't have any food they needed me to handle. They had all those logistics covered. They're just like, these people, there's 20 of them, and we don't have enough people to listen to them. And I felt exactly that same way when I was going through it. And it was just such a healing process for me to be able to give. And I just know I want that feeling again, to be able to give regularly and show that this is a good way of life. It's a liberty-loving way of life. I guess maybe I'm trying to force the network into it somehow, but it is something that I think that libertarians need to see. And I especially want people to see on our network, because it is the ground floor and not those high intellectual, all we do is talk to you and talk at you all the time. But that's all I got.
So it's like, I'm going to get Jeffrey Miller on, who's fairly libertarian. He co-wrote the book Mate with Tucker Max, and it's basically about dating. And there's a great podcast called Mating Grounds. Like, if you're bad with men or women, like, that's a great show to listen to. And my goal on going out on dates after the divorce was to get that person to like me. Like, I had a goal. And basically what the thing taught me was, don't have a goal. Just show up and try to connect to another human being and have fun. Like, your goal is not to get sex. Your goal is not to get a relationship. Your goal is not to get anything other than a nice connection with another human being. And I think that libertarians a lot of times have a goal. Like, I'm trying to convert you. I'm trying to do this. If you want to sell anybody on anything, just talk to them like they're a person. Really actually listen to them. Look them in the eye. Talk to them like they're a person. That you have no other goal other than just trying to be their friend. And eventually, like, they'll start asking you questions. Like, if your goal is to constantly preach, it's not how it works. Like, if you're trying to teach to people who are not ready to be taught to, or preach to people who are not ready to listen, like, then there's no value in it. You have to build a relationship with somebody first. And you can do that in a matter of moments at an outreach booth. Start by asking questions. That's the best way. Like, the number one way is get people talking about themselves. Like, if you get people talking about themselves, people love to talk about themselves. I talk to so many people on a daily basis. Like, I'm the I would be a billionaire if I charged for counseling. And I love it because I love talking to people about their problems and encouraging them, but like, very few people ever ask me, so how was your day? Very few people ask me, so what are you struggling with? And when people ask me, like, how are you? I go, oh, good. I don't ever go, well, I'm really, And when I have done that in the past, people are really willing to listen. And if you're the person in somebody's life that is asking everybody, like, so what's going on with you? Like, really, how's your day? Like, what are you doing? Like, people they just don't have the opportunity to connect with another person because everything is just so quick and so fast and so fake that if you're an authentic, vulnerable person with another person, they'll connect with you. And as you converse with that person, and you start to learn about each other's values, then you start working on each other's ideas. Like, I cannot walk up to Rhinehold at an outreach booth or in a restaurant, sit down, and change Rhinehold's worldview in 5 minutes or 2 hours or a year. Like, it takes people years to move on from things, let go of things, attach to things, detach from things, detach from people, change their views on certain issues. Like, think about your own life and how long it's taken you on things like gay marriage or racism or abortion or immigration and like you feel like you have a better handle on those issues, but you still don't. Like, you still know you have so much to learn about those things. And then we never extend that to the people that we're talking. We just get frustrated at them because they're not listening. Well, that's a controlling behavior, and that's not how you persuade someone to your side. So connection is the number one thing. Like, if you go out on a date with somebody, your goal is to make them laugh and learn about them. Trust me, you'll get laid like 50% of the time. Like, it's because people are just, I mean, if that, like, I think a lot of young guys, like, that's their goal, is just to get laid. And so they're like trying these moves, and I'll neg you and I'll treat you like a mushroom, keep you in the dark and shovel shit. Like, it's the most manipulative bullshit, and women see right through that kind of stuff, you know? And I think the same thing applies when we go out and try and, like, I'm going to convert you to libertarianism. It's like they see through that. They don't want to be manipulated into believing what you believe. They want to understand why you believe what they believe so they can learn something. And that's a huge difference.
Well, there was a recent Liberty convention. I don't know if it was LibertyCon, but it was one of those recently. And the speaker got up and says, how many people have read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People? And one person raised their hand.
Right.
And it's like, there's a problem. If you haven't read that book.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me. Hodey, we've been here for 4 hours, and I thank you guys for your time, and thank you to everybody that listens, and hopefully you got a lot out of it. If you did, please send a note to Rhinehold and, Dennis on Facebook. I'll out you. Harry's on Discord. Hodey. So thanks, guys. We appreciate you, and we will see you next week.
Download Paladins.